The Kansas City Chiefs and general manager Brett Veach are back at it again with the acquisition of wide receiver Tyquan Thornton, who was recently waived from the New England Patriots. If you go back just a few weeks here on the channel, I made a video about I thought at that time one of the emerging targets for the Kansas City Chiefs would be in trade talks Tyquan Thornton from the New England Patriots, because he represents a lot of the things that the Kansas City Chiefs appear to be trying to move towards with their wide receiver core, even if that is on the lower level of the skills and talents, right? So yeah, skills and talents. He's got a lot of measurables, and we'll get to that in a minute. But real quick, guys, from Arrowhead Pride, in an article titled "Report, Chiefs are signing receiver Tyquan Thornton to practice squad." Yeah, I should have made that clear too. He is being signed to the practice squad, not the active roster. But I think he could be an active roster participant in the not-so-distant future, and I'll get into that a little bit in this video as well. Subtitled, Thornton became available this past weekend and chose Kansas City over other options, by Peter Sweeney. I have to admit, I didn't know that when you were on the waiver wire, you got to choose options. I thought that you were claimed. The article itself states, this is beginning with, I believe, the second paragraph in the article, Thornton, 24, entered the league as a second-round selection out of Baylor by the New England Patriots in the 2022 NFL Draft. The Patriots actually traded with the Kansas City Chiefs during that draft for the number 50 pick to select Thornton. The Chiefs received 2 picks in return, including number 54, which they used to select wide receiver Sky Moore, a wide receiver, by the way, whose career has kind of resembled Tyquan Thornton's. The 6'2", 185-pound receiver appeared in 28 games in 3 seasons, 2022 through 2024, for New England. 13 starts, accumulating 39 catches, 385 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Shoulder injuries in 2022 and 2023 limited his production. So let's look at the athlete that is Tyquan Thornton. And 6'2" and 3/8. So he is approaching, not approaching, I suppose that would be the wrong verb because he will not get there, but he's nearly 6'3" tall, 181 pounds. You're looking at a guy that's very close to Marquez Valdes-Scantling as far as height and weight are concerned. 33 1/4 inch arms, 8 1/4 inch hands, ran a 4.28 40-yard dash. That is absolutely wild for a guy who is 6'3" tall. Now, you see right there, a 10-yard split of 1.41. That doesn't make any sense. That is blazing fast. I talked about that in the video that I made a few weeks ago, and it just didn't sit well with me. It didn't make any sense that a human being could be that fast. The sort of highest 10-yard split I had ever heard of was a 1.49. So to see that 1.41 was wild, but I went and checked. There are several sources that have it listed as a 1.41, but the official NFL website has it as a 1.51 at the NFL Combine. So it would have been a 1.51 10-yard split. If it was a 1.41, guys, he would be absolutely elite. You would figure out something to do with him on the football field. You would not waive him ever. The vertical leap of 38.5 inches is a good vertical, is borderline elite vertical leap. So you get into the 40, 41, you're looking at a pretty elite vertical leap. We'll talk about a vertical leap in a little bit that is better than that, but 10-foot, 11-inch broad jump. You're looking at a wide receiver who is an absolute stud as far as the measurables are concerned. Now, when we get into production in the NFL, that's where things go downhill just a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. As a rookie in 2022, he had 45 targets, 22 receptions, and 5 drops. If we go down here to the advanced, you see the 5 drops right there. So had 247 yards his rookie season. Does that sound familiar? It sounds an awful lot like Sky Moore's numbers from his rookie season. An 11.2 yard average, 2 touchdowns, however. More prolific in the touchdown department as a rookie than Sky Moore has been in his NFL career. Even when you start to move along there, he had 3 rushing attempts for 16 yards and a touchdown. So he was used, I guess I should say, in the rushing department as well. As a sophomore in the NFL, his targets reduced by half to 23, his receptions by nearly half to 13, and his yards by more than half, 91 yards. He had a further 3 attempts rushing for 51 yards, only having 1 first down on that list. I don't understand the math there. How you have a 17-yard average rushing and you only converted 1 first down. It sounds like I could not find any of the highlights or the actual runs. It looks like he had a very long run and then 2 not long runs. So when we are looking at Tyquan Thornton from a production standpoint, it's just not there. This season, he has appeared in 6 games with 1 start, 13 starts over the course of his career in 28 appearances, but this season, just 8 targets, 4 receptions, and 47 yards. On those 4 receptions, he converted 2 of them for first downs. You're looking at a guy here who has an awful lot of tools, has not converted them onto the football field. Getting into sort of the advanced metrics here, what is interesting to look at for me is the drops and the rating when targeted. 5 drops as a rookie, still had a 62.0 rating when targeted. Not great, but nothing devastating there. As a sophomore in the NFL with those 23 targets, converting 13 of them for receptions, he had just 1 drop. The rating when targeted went up to 65.7. However, this year, rating when targeted plummeted to 28.6. Now, part of that is because he has been targeted just 8 times. 1 of those was intercepted, but again, you're not looking at a guy who has converted terribly much of his actual prowess to the football field. One more thing I guess we should go over first. When you're looking at his snap counts as a rookie, he had 527 snap counts, 224 as a sophomore, and 112 this season for the New England Patriots, diminishing returns for the wide receiver in the NFL. Now, I want to go back up here because we're looking at something interesting with this guy as an athlete, and I wanted to sort of make some comparisons. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 6'4" tall, apparently basically right on the dot. So 6'4", here we have a wide receiver who is 6'2" and 3/8", basically 6'2.5". Marquez Valdes-Scantling was 206 pounds. However slight he looked in that frame, he was over the 200-pound mark. Tyquan Thornton is 181. I believe he is currently listed at 185. The 33-inch arms, 33 1/4 inches, Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 32 1/4, 10 1/4 inch hands compared to Tyquan Thornton's 8 1/4 inch hands, which might have something to do with the drop rate. Marquez Valdes-Scantling ran a 4.37 40-yard dash compared to Tyquan Thornton's 4.28. MVS had that elite 1.49 10-yard split compared to the 1.51 by Tyquan Thornton. Here's where we get some real differences, some appreciable differences here. The 20-yard shuttle, MVS had a 4.17 compared to 4.39 by Tyquan Thornton. Super confusing. And I'll get to that in a minute, but the 3-cone drill for MVS was 6.85 compared to 7.25 for Tyquan Thornton. Here's why that's super confusing. Tyquan Thornton moves on the football field. He has cut ability. He has start-stop ability. He can juke. He can make cuts in his routes. All I ever saw MVS do was run straight. Is the only thing I ever saw him do. And I'm not saying that to criticize him. He did it very well as a 4.37 40-yard guy. I didn't see any of the wiggle in his game that Tyquan Thornton shows on the regular. So interesting there, somehow that dissipated from MVS's game as he got to the NFL. Another thing here, the vertical leap. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had a 30.5-inch vertical leap, not an explosive number. Tyquan Thornton's is 38.5 inches. 10-foot 4-inch broad jump for MVS, a 10-foot 11 broad jump for Tyquan Thornton. So both of those explosive numbers end up going to Tyquan Thornton over Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Sorry, I was trying to remember a name because we have another comparison that comes to us from Twitter, Nick Jacobs, who is a very good follow on Twitter if you do not follow him on Twitter. He compares Tyquan Thornton to Chris Conley. I don't see that comparison at all. Chris Conley, one of the all-time greatest combine performances that you will see from an intriguing prospect that is not going to be a first-round pick. Chris Conley, if you don't remember, 6'1" and 7/8 inches, so basically a 6'2" wide receiver. That is great stuff. 213 pounds, great number for a wide receiver. 33 3/4 inch arms, great number for a wide receiver. 4.35 40-yard dash with a 1.52 10-yard split. Absolutely elite stuff right there. Then you get into the explosive numbers, guys. So I'll just get this out of the way real quick because it's not all that important, but very impressive. 18 reps on the bench press for Chris Conley. Do you remember what Chris Conley's vertical leap was? 45 inches. That is NBA stuff. 11-foot 7-inch broad jump. Compare those to 38.5, which is a nearly elite number for Tyquan Thornton, and a 10-foot 11-inch broad jump. Chris Conley was an absolute monster as far as the combine itself was concerned. So what are we talking about when we talk about Tyquan Thornton joining the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, when I look at his game, Nick Jacobs is welcome to his opinion. I don't see that in Tyquan Thornton. What I see is a wide receiver who looks like Mecole Hardman and Xavier Worthy had a baby. He's not as fast as Xavier. He's not as stout as Mecole, but he's not as twitchy as Kadarius. But if he can find his footing in the Chiefs' offense with what it is that he does, he could bring a new element to this offense. I think, and this, look, make fun of me if you want. Tell me I'm bashing Marquez Valdes-Scantling if you want. Tell me anything you want about how I'm not being fair to previous Kansas City Chiefs players. I think that he could very easily be a plus over what Marquez Valdes-Scantling was last year. The interesting thing about the Chiefs this season, guys, I think I would take the wide receiver core as it stands right now over the wide receiver core the Chiefs had last year. The offense still isn't getting it done. Now, part of this is going to be, it seems, a little bit of paranoia from Patrick Mahomes as far as what his offensive tackles are actually up to on the field, what they're doing in his peripheral vision, or not doing, I suppose would be the correct way to frame that. But this offense, if you were to show me on paper before this season, I would imagine that it was much more explosive than it is. So I think signing Tyquan Thornton, even though it's just at the practice squad, I think he'll spend probably a couple weeks on the practice squad and might find himself on the active roster. Maybe he's just a bust. Okay, so I don't want to sound like I'm selling anything. Marquez Valdez-Scantling's final season in Kansas City was so atrocious that I don't think there is any understating the fact that basically anyone would have been better in that role. His final season here, you had 21 receptions, 315 yards, and a touchdown with all of those snaps that he played. I think that you are looking at a wide receiver in Tyquan Thornton who can very easily run the clear out routes that MVS was responsible for in this offense. Moving on. The next thing that I think is evidenced by this signing is that this team is once again prioritizing speed. They are once again prioritizing explosiveness. And this is interesting. And part of the theory I have about why Patrick Mahomes is so risk-averse lately is that it started to burn him so bad last year. But really, if you want an overarching theory, this signing is interesting because the Kansas City Chiefs had an explosive offense with Mahomes for 4 years. In those 4 years that they were a super explosive offense, high stakes, high rewards offense, they lost 2 AFC championship games, one to the Bengals, one to the Patriots. They lost a Super Bowl, allegedly, to the Buccaneers, though I still have never met someone who has seen that entire game. And they won a Super Bowl. They won that first Super Bowl against the 49ers. That was all with an explosive offense, a very impressive resume. Since they've had a non-explosive, non-impressive offense, a bit and piece offense, well, the only thing they've done is won back-to-back Super Bowls, and they have the most wins in the NFL this season. So I think part of this is Mahomes saying, look, when I started playing this way, tamping things down a little bit before I lit the pipe, I won consecutive Super Bowls versus all the running around, all the high flying, all the gunning it from my hips that I was doing the previous 4 seasons and ended up with 1 ring. But this season, so when they prioritized the past 2 seasons, it wasn't just that they had a bad offense. They were prioritizing other things at the wide receiver position. They wanted guys who would run the right routes. They wanted guys who would be more assured with the receptions, right? Juju Smith-Schuster, Rashee Rice, DeAndre Hopkins, all of these were the number 1 wide receivers over the past 3 seasons with less explosive offenses. None of those guys are approaching Tyreek Hill numbers, right, as far as the 40-yard dash is concerned, and they won 2 Super Bowls with that. It is interesting to see this re-emphasis appearing in the wide receiver room on the 40-yard dash. Is this going to be a constant back-and-forth cycle with the Kansas City Chiefs where they get a whole bunch of fast guys, realize that none of them can catch, and then cash that in for a Juju Smith-Schuster on the outside? I don't know, but it is interesting to see it happen. This is, the number 3 thing here, a classic Veach move. Tyquan Thornton, not the highest pick in the NFL draft, but still a second-round pick, a fringe top 50 pick, and didn't work out. In fact, one would be tempted to say that he crashed and burned in New England. There was nothing going in his time there, nothing even particularly promising. But Brett Veach is going to make the signing, kick the tires, and say, hey, do I have the pieces necessary on the roster now to convert this guy into a legitimate threat? Well, the piece necessary to convert this guy into a legitimate threat might just be the quarterback with the largest arm in the NFL. Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs have the ability to convert this guy into a maybe number 3 wide receiver. Here's the thing as well. It's not just the speed. Tyquan Thornton is 6'2.5" tall. So he brings an element of height to this offense as well. One of the things that Xavier Worthy isn't a short guy, but he's under 6 foot. Mecole Hardman is a bit of a shorter guy. You have a lot of wide receiver. Patrick Mahomes has never really had a big guy to throw to at the wide receiver position besides Kelvin Benjamin, and I don't think anyone really expected that to work. I was very excited for that signing, but I don't think anyone really expected it to particularly work out for the Kansas City Chiefs. So adding a guy who is over 6'2", for example, does bring something else to the offense. And again, just a practice squad guy at this point. Now, should Juju Smith-Schuster be able to stay healthy, this pickup, should he find himself on the active roster, might get Justin Watson off the field. Both of the J. Watts might be gone this season. I don't think they will cut Justin Watson, but you might render him without home in the lineup. At this point, what you would have, should Tyquan Thornton find himself useful in the Kansas City offense, is Nuke Hopkins at the number 1 wide receiver position. He's going to make the catch. He's a guy that is, if he can get his hands on the ball, the catch is made. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, who is going to do what it was that Justin Watson had been doing in the offense. Remember, Juju Smith-Schuster this past game against Juju Smith-Schuster this past game, this was his first time on the field with DeAndre Hopkins. So despite the fact that they lost to the Bills, it was the first time they were really on the field at the same time, figuring out what they have to do. One of the things that Juju Smith-Schuster is doing is what it was that Justin Watson had been doing, which is blocking, which is running a lot of clear-out routes, which is taking people out of the play but still providing a legitimate target. Justin Watson not as legitimate a target as Juju Smith-Schuster. Justin Watson not as good at football as Juju Smith-Schuster. So now your guy who is setting up other people's routes can catch the football as well. Then you have Xavier for the deep ball, the speed threat. I think the role in which we saw Xavier Worthy during that Buffalo Bills game is going to be the role we see him in going forward. Looked a lot more explosive, ran a lot more different types of routes. And then at that 4th spot, you have Tyquan Thornton / Mecole Hardman for a lot of the at the line of scrimmage, the deep stuff, the jet sweep stuff, the stuff for which speed is the element that is going to be the element of danger there. You throw a guy the football at the line of scrimmage, the only thing that's dangerous there is if he gets past everyone. That's the type of stuff I think you're going to get from Tyquan Thornton in this offense. He does look good on the jet sweep, so I think that's what we're going to see from him. And we have seen, by the way, Mecole Hardman have a little bit of difficulty staying on the field this season. So it might just be necessary to sign Tyquan Thornton to have that element remain in the offense. Here's something interesting. Imagine this lineup. You have Travis Kelce on the field at the tight end position, but other than that, you have Isaiah Pacheco, who runs a 4.37 40-yard dash, Xavier Worthy, who runs a 4.21 40-yard dash, Tyquan Thornton, who runs a 4.28 40-yard dash, and Mecole Hardman, who runs a 4.33 40-yard dash. That legion of zoom that the Kansas City Chiefs used to employ included Demarcus Robinson, who I think had a 4.52, 4.53 40-yard dash. This legion of zoom is zoom, zoom, zoom. This legion of zoom could legitimately win a 4x1 race at the elite college level. This legion of zoom might not be able to catch the football, but the safety sure will be deep, right? So you get those 3 guys on the field, and maybe Travis Kelce has some room underneath to make the catch. The last thing I want to say here is that I do not believe that this is an indictment on Justin Ross or Nico Remigio or even Marcus Washington for that point. I don't think that necessarily. Now, who gets cut in order for Tyquan Thornton to join this team on the practice squad? I don't know. But I don't think it necessarily says anything about Justin Ross or Nico Remigio, though I do think Tyquan Thornton will be quicker to be put on the active roster. I think that Tyquan Thornton is a value proposition move. It's a guy that there's not a whole lot of risk, but if things in New England just didn't work out because of the mix of Tyquan Thornton not being the greatest and New England being very bad, then the not the greatest wide receiver can still be a pretty good wide receiver if he finds an offense that he can fit in, if he finds a quarterback that can get him the ball, if he finds a place that can use the things which make him unique in order to stifle a defense. It's possible this never goes anywhere at all. It's possible that this is a signing that ends up being an also-ran and we forget it by 2026. We don't remember the name Tyquan Thornton. It's also possible that the Kansas City Chiefs just found their number 3 wide receiver. Kind of technically, when you really kind of maybe move on from one of the, somewhere there's some, this is a guy who can threaten a defense, but has not to this point in his NFL career. Can Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes take that modicum of talent and that extreme amount of potential and make him into an actual football player? That is what we're waiting to see. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.